First, I want to give the word to our host, the tireless Secretary General of the Vienna Economic Forum, Dr. Ambassador KIRTCHEVA, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. ULTSCH, our moderator today to this Alpha session. It's my privilege for 20th time in my life to open 20th Vienna Economic Forum, a jubilee in this year. And I'm very thankful, and I would like to say thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner. Thank you very much, Excellencies, Prime Ministers and patrons of Vienna Economic Forum. I'm very proud about Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, here also from Montenegro, new elected government of Montenegro. On behalf of the Board of Vienna Economic Forum, of the President Jakovic, who is here sitting on the podium also with me, thank you very much for coming and welcome to this beautiful, wonderful hall, City Hall of Vienna. I would like to start this session with to give a start to the session with a very important example of the energy sector, a topic which was elaborated in many different perspectives in the previous sessions. It is a fact. The energy sector is the most advanced in terms of the physical infrastructure, as well as in terms of regional market integration. For the time being, the energy sector has achieved a noticeable level of coordination and integration of the Southeastern Europe electricity market and continuous working on further integration. This is a great opportunity to learn from all of you and to learn from Commissioner, from the Prime Ministers, from our distinguished Ivan KRASTEV. What is the vision of all of you for the further development of this market? What is the insight what the Commissioner for Economy, Mr. Paolo Gentiloni, provide us about the EU plans for the Southeastern Europe's economic integration as a precondition for the regional and EU consolidation. Thank you once again, and I may pass on now the micro to our moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Ambassador. So welcome to the Alpha session. Well, if you look around, no need to explain why it's called Alpha session. We got an EU commissioner here, we got 3 prime ministers here, we got 1 deputy prime minister, maybe probably the most clear-sighted political scientist in Europe here, Ms. KIRTCHEVA, Mrs. Jankovic, Mr. Ambassador Jankovic. So it's great to be here. Well, it's a rather large crowd. So we got 8 speakers here. So if you would like add up 3 more, it could form some sort of a soccer team, or if we would split it, would have 2 chamber orchestras. So it is essential that we keep a strict eye on the time schedule, because otherwise there won't be a balanced speaking time. So this will be my main task as the moderator, to keep an eye on the time schedule. But also let me allow a personal remark, maybe also self-critical. We as journalists, we have developed a tendency to become a little bit single-issued, a little bit monothematic. So there was now the headlines are full with Gaza, before that with Ukraine, before that with the pandemic. So I'm really glad that this forum here gives us the opportunity to discuss a region which I think is really essential for the future of Europe. And it's great to have you all here. And let me please start with you, Mr. High Commissioner. Paolo Gentiloni, no need really to introduce him. He's a commissioner since some time now. Before that, he was Prime Minister in Italy. Before that, Foreign Minister. He was a founding member and leader of the Social Democratic Party, Partito Democratico. So it's a real pleasure to have you here. Please give a warm applause to Mr. Gentiloni, and please take the floor. Welcome.
Thank you very much, ambassadors, prime ministers, dear guests. And let me thank the Vienna Forum for the invitation and more broadly for your work of promoting international understanding and closer economic links from the Adriatic to the Black Sea. So in this region that straddles history, cultures, new and old Europe, with Vienna as a privileged observatory and bridge. There is no doubt, as you just said, that we are living in turbulent times. In the space of 3 years, we have witnessed the global pandemic, the return of war in the European continent, an energy crisis, rising inflation, and recently the tragic conflict in the Middle East. These shocks, of course, have rippled around all the world, but it is in Europe that their effects, especially in the aftermath of the Russian invasion, have been felt more acutely for obvious reasons: geography and energy. The European economy has shown, nevertheless, an impressive resilience in the face of these shocks. We had good growth in 2022. And if we look to the perspective for next year, we could have again some level of growth. In any case, we avoided recession. But we know that growth is losing momentum, and I will present the Commission economic forecast next Wednesday. And given the strong trade, investment, and financial links that we share, the growth dynamics in the EU will also affect the rest of Central, Eastern, and Southeastern Europe. In this context of slower growth and increased geopolitical tensions, it might be tempting to pull up the drawbridge and retreat within our borders. There is a lot of words on restricting supply chains, protecting. I think this would be a serious mistake. At least a simplified version of this would be a very serious mistake. So increasing economic cooperation must start with those countries and regions that are closer to home, because geography, as they say, is destiny, and because there is a huge potential waiting to be tapped. The succession of crises we faced has brought us closer together, at least potentially. We increased our macro-financial assistance to extend the very same solidarity measures that we have taken within the Union. We have supported vulnerable households against energy costs, and we are helping to build new infrastructure to reduce dependency on Russian fossil fuels. But on top of that, I think we must seize this momentum to enhance cooperation. And in this sense, this year's forum could not be more timely, as it comes just 5 days after the adoption of a very important package of enlargement by the Commission. This package includes, and it was not topic in the discussion about the package, includes a new growth plan for the Western Balkans, a plan which aims to boost the economy of the region and close the socio-economic gap by the end of this decade. To do so, the Commission wants 4 things: bring the Western Balkans closer to the single market, deepen regional economic integration, accelerate fundamental reforms, and increase pre-accession funds. This is in our intention a new approach, in the sense that we are not just asking our partners to take new steps towards us, but we try also to take big steps towards them. We are opening up our single market in a number of key areas, including free movement of goods, services and workers, the single euro payments area, transport, energy and the digital single market. For all the countries that joined the EU in the last 2 decades, access to the single market has been the main driver of growth and key to accelerate economic convergence with the rest of the EU and with the rest of the advanced world, the advanced economies. And the journey must continue, for example, on Schengen. We now want our single market to be a driver of change also for those who share a willingness to join the Union and a commitment to reforms. This closer association with our single market should go hand in hand with a common regional market, which is crucial to attract European investors and unlock the economic potential of the region. We need progress in this common regional market. We are referring to it since 10 years, but I think we still need progress. We want to offer Western Balkans some of the advantages to membership in advance. But this means that certain requirements of membership has also to be met in advance. Finally, we are increasing financial assistance to support these reforms with a new facility for the Western Balkans worth €6 billion. This push to bring our economies closer is also happening at a time when the geopolitical landscape is shifting. We are not entering an era of deglobalization, but efforts to address supply chains vulnerabilities and dependencies will likely lead to more nearshoring of production and stronger regional cooperation. And this trend will also strengthen the EU's economic ties with the region. So it's not only enlargement, but is also the path of the globalization pushing to stronger regional and near integration that is bringing this package to our decision. As you all know, the cooperation we are seeking is not just economic, but also political. Over the last few months, the enlargement process has gathered momentum, culminating in last week's decision that I was referring to open accession negotiation with Ukraine, Moldova, and Bosnia, and to grant candidate status to Georgia, while also noting the progress that others have made, especially Albania and North Macedonia. We all know that the road to accession is long and winding, and then along this road, frustration is also possible when it takes too long and when you go to hurdles that were not planned or predictable. The transformation that is required at all levels in the journey to EU membership is not easy. Enlargement is complex and it takes time. But please do not underestimate that, to quote Galileo, eppur si muove, and yet it moves. So the enlargement process is moving. It is back on the table as one of the key political questions facing the EU now and in the coming years. It will be a priority for the next Commission and the next institutional cycle, a real priority. We must seize this historic opportunity to react to the Russian invasion in Ukraine and to forge a stronger, more united Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Let me allow to ask you a very short question. Would you agree that there is more geopolitical thinking now in the European Commission after February 24th, after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and this whole enlargement process, which is hopefully accelerating now, is the embodiment of this thinking?
Well, I think that history and geopolitics have always been at the basis of what we call enlargement, meaning other countries being candidate or entering in the European Union. This was the case after the fall of the Soviet Union. This was the case after the collapse of the former Yugoslavia. And this is the case now. So I think we should not be surprised by the fact that Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine, Maidan, people with the European flags, not only in Maidan but also in other countries, is giving a new boost to this process. My call is to understand that this new boost is an opportunity for the Western Balkans, and it is an opportunity to overcome the difficulties, the vetoes, the slowness that we had to address in the last years. I know that this is not easy, but I think that, yes, there is a geopolitical, of course, boost, but this boost will affect the whole process of enlargement, and we should seize this opportunity.
One add-on question. You've mentioned the necessity to unlock the economic potential in the Western Balkans. From the top of your head, where do you see this potential, if you look at it, and in a nutshell?
Well, of course, I think I would say that there are two, in my view, two main things. First is the attempt to do whatever is possible for regional economic integration. I remember when I was serving as Prime Minister, we had a meeting of this that we call Berlin process in Trieste in Italy. And at the time there was a conclusion with the Western Balkans partners deciding for a regional common market, so to say. And this is, I think, the first. And the second is very ambitious, what we describe in this package, to try to make steps forward towards the single market also before the formal accession into the European Union. Because this is not only a way to avoid frustration in public opinion about the process, but this is an economic opportunity because when we say this word nearshoring in our head, this means the region, not only the single market and our neighbors. So this is an opportunity both for the European Union and those that are already in the single market and for the other countries. It will not be easy to make these steps forward despite the fact that the enlargement is not yet concluded, but it is exactly the philosophy of the package that we approved 5 days ago.
Well, many thanks. And by the way, I'm really happy that you gave us some sort of a growth outlook, if I understood you right, for the next year. Let me turn to our next speaker. You can remain seated. Let me shortly introduce you. Next speaker is Nikolai DENKOV. He's a Prime Minister of Bulgaria since June, if I got it right, in an interesting political constellation. He was previously the Minister for Education, and he is a physicist and chemist, so a scientist, some sort of a Bulgarian Merkel, maybe. So I'm really looking forward on your take. I'm glad that you're here. Please take the mic and maybe tell us your vision for economic success, because I do believe maybe at the beginning of being a prime minister, you put most of the energy in really putting forward and having such a thing like a vision. So maybe you can share some with us, please.
Okay, thanks a lot for the introduction. I'll try to put the context first. I like very much this saying that all the problems, if we succeed to convert them into opportunities, these opportunities could be great. And looking back 10 to 20 years, we could see that the border of Europe was in some way fuzzy. It was not very clear. Is Russia the main partner on the east of Europe? Do we try to incorporate Turkey in Europe? In which way? What type of contracts? And so on and so forth. So in this geography, as you say, the geography is destiny, it was not very clear what is the role of the Balkan countries, including Bulgaria, if you like. And then all of a sudden we had this crisis that started with COVID, the war, the conflicts. These are huge problems, but in some way they allowed us to define better where we are, who we are, and for some of us the question became existential. Do we belong to Europe or we don't belong there? And I can say this because these questions I can see every day in our political life in Bulgaria. And we have to decide it at the end of the day. And you know, in the quantum physics, because you said about the physics and chemistry, in the quantum physics there is such a concept that a quantum body could be intermediately between two different positions, but at the end, if you have to measure something, the object should define whether it is here or there. In some way, I feel like that in Bulgaria. So we have to define whether we are truly Europeans or we still want to continue to be something not very well defined. And in this world, I think the second one is impossible. So starting in June, as you say, within this context, we had to decide with my colleagues in the cabinet, with the other political leaders, where we want to be, and I have no doubt I want to be European in all sense of this word, keeping in mind that I'm also Bulgarian, and I don't see any contradiction between these two, because Europe is a great example of a multicultural society, which is something that has to be appreciated and valued every day. And then we looked first on the neighbors that are parts of the European Union. So it's Greece and Romania on both sides. And we started very, very actively to work with them to develop this south through Bulgaria, north to Romania, Moldova, then to Ukraine, to Hungary and Austria as well. This axis that has been always a possibility, but has never been developed. Why? Because, okay, we were in a fuzzy place. Why now? This is the eastern flank of NATO, this is the eastern part of Europe. If you don't develop it, there is no chance for this eastern part of Europe. And all of a sudden, it turned out that every one of us recognizes that this is very important. So we were looking what are the best digital, highway, railway paths that we have to develop. All of a sudden, it turned out that we can find funding, public-private possibilities, opportunities. All of a sudden, it turns out that some of these projects that have been there for 20, 30 years become some of the most important ones in this region. So now everything is developing very, very rapidly. And I'll come back to this again. Looking on the west, we have my dear colleague Dimitar KOVACHEVSKI and Edi Rama, and we have the corridor number 8. And again, it is staying there for 10 years. And there is some development, but no any strong push for this. And all of a sudden, it turns out that this is crucial. It's crucial for the NATO mobility. It's crucial for having the diversity of the oil and products of energy and so on and so forth. So all of a sudden, all this became of completely different importance, very different, how to say, very different substance of what we discuss. And I'll finish with this. And it turned out that we realized this, but one of the most difficult part is to change the mentality of the people in our countries to understand that we are Bulgarians, citizens of Albania, whatever, but we're also part of Europe. And if we don't understand that this is more important today, it will be very difficult to progress further. So these are the type of the thoughts that I'll put in the discussion today.
Great. But let me ask you, please keep the mind, why is it Bulgaria is a member of the European Union for quite a while? Why is it that there is still not a firm European mentality, that it is fuzzy, as you have said? Yep. What's the reason for it?
There are two. This is a combination of two completely different reasons. One of them is that we do have very strong cultural, historical, scientific relations with Russia. So even when I was a student, I studied chemistry and physics from the Russian textbooks. This is me. And the reasons for that. Part of it is a propaganda that was part of our life, even starting from the kids in the kindergartens, in the school, and so on. The second reason, and it's a completely different one, is that once Putin decided not to follow the European agenda of Russia, which was quite possible in the beginning, he decided to follow the imperial approach. And seeing that it is very difficult to give a positive example, as we had before with science, culture, and so on, he started to try to conquer these countries with the propaganda, hybrid war, and so on. So you discuss in Western Europe this hybrid war maybe in the last 2-3 years. In our countries, it has been there for decades. It has never stopped, actually. And the combination of these two is really very, very difficult to overcome.
Second very short question, just to give us an idea of the sort of cooperation you want to achieve on the eastern flank, on this axis you have portrayed. You've mentioned corridor number 8. Could you tell us a little bit more about it and about other projects? And why is it all of a sudden easier than before to get funding for it?
Yeah. So corridor number 8 goes from Albania to Bulgaria. So when I talk about south to north, I mean these are the main ports in Greece, so Alexandroupolis, Thessaloniki, and Kavala, and then connecting them through the Bulgarian ports, then across Danube River going to Romania. So this is something that, if you look on the map, is very natural way to develop this eastern region. Why it was not developed? Because until very recently, literally until a year ago, Greece, Bulgaria, and Romania were competing. And they were competing for the routes from east to west. So there was no driver to develop south to north. And there are historical and political reasons. I don't want to go too deep there because this could be hours. But what happened all of a sudden, we realized, all of us, that if we develop this, all of us will be much better. So these are the type of changes in the mentality that we have to develop in our countries.
Thank you for your most interesting remarks, Mr. Prime Minister. Now, let me turn to Mr. Albin KURTI. I'm glad that you're here. I learned that you came directly from a conference in Paris, and you are Prime Minister since 2021. You won back then the election in a landslide victory. And yeah, you have most interesting biography. Started as a student, a protest leader. You were harassed by the police, detained, imprisoned. Started your own movement, which turned into a party. And here you are now as a Prime Minister of Kosovo. So would be glad to hear from you. What do you think is the key to economic success in Kosovo?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ulch, dear Prime Ministers, dear EU Commissioner Gentiloni, dear Ambassadors KIRTCHEVA and Jakovic. Yes, in 10 days I will reach 2/3 of my mandate, and this has been good 32 months, I must say. While we all need growth for our economy, we have to mind 3 big challenges which happen at local, regional, and global level alike. First is security threats. Second is social inequality, because you have growth, but you have to distribute and redistribute it. And third is climate change. During these over 2.5 years that we are in power, we managed to add each year 1 billion euros at least to our economy. And to our predecessors, it was needed 3 years to add 1 billion. In 2021, we had 10.7% of GDP economic growth, then 5.2%, and in this year, we're going to have around 3.8% real growth. Also, inflation went down throughout this year. Inflation in January this year was 12%, and it dropped last month to 3.3%. Kosovo is not a big country, but is a great example how freedom becomes development and anti-corruption becomes growth. According to different international organizations, we have had great democratic progress. Freedom House, Transparency International, World Press Freedom Index, Reporters Without Borders, Varieties of Democracies Institute, and so on and so forth, World Justice Project. We have had progress in terms of human rights, freedom of the media, rule of law, fighting corruption. And in this way, our economy was growing because people paid more taxes and contributed more when they saw that there's no corruption in the government. But likewise, when people are hopeful and optimistic, they rather spend than save, which is good for their lives and country's economy. Therefore, when we took office, there was huge trade deficit. Export to import ratio was 1:9. Now is less than 1:6. But with a new law on salaries in public sector, we also decreased inequality. In 2021, the ratio between the highest salary in public administration and the lowest one was 20:1. Now is less than 5:1. For example, my salary as a prime minister is less than 3 times higher than of the soldier of our army or a senior policeman. And we believe this is very important because less inequality within the society, also the aggregate demand is greater. For 2024, we have increased budget, especially for education, healthcare, agriculture, and defense. Today, this morning, in 250 schools all over Kosovo, we started coding, which will be introduced in the first grade of elementary school in next academic year, 2024-2025, because ICT sector is blooming. We have 1,500 companies. Over 3/4 of them are doing exports. 20,000 professionals are working in ICT sector. And Esperanto failed in 20th century, but I believe coding will succeed in 21st century. And we look forward to help our youth in terms of skills for computer science in general, software engineering, developers, and AI, which is already future at present. I would like also to emphasize the fact that we have had signed 4 agreements in Berlin process, 3 of them in November last year in Berlin, and 1 additional in Tirana this October. I believe that Berlin process is the way forward to prepare Western Balkans for EU integration. A tide that will lift all the boats. Of course, those who want to integrate, because if you check polls in each country, there are differences who wants to integrate into EU with what kind of zeal. Kosovo doesn't prefer, if I may use the metaphor of Prime Minister DENKOV, we do not prefer quantum geopolitics. We were very firm with EU and US, with NATO. We put sanctions to Russian Federation. We have no dilemmas that democracy and development should go hand in hand. Therefore, we look forward to cooperate, yes, for economic interests, but a value-based one. Because if you have interests which cares not much for values, then everything becomes fragile and short-term. And the last thing that I would like to mention is that we have plans to link Pristina with Durrës with railway. And I would use here the presence of EU Commissioner Gentiloni to include Pristina-Durrës railway into TEN-T, Trans-European Network, because in this way, a great injustice done to my country could be rectified, and it will be good for the entire region and for connectivity and for growth. And the very last thing is that until 31st of January, we have an open auction for a 100 megawatt solar park. It is site-specific in a municipality of Rathaus in Kosovo. And we plan to do mid-next year another 150 megawatts of wind, non-specific site, because this is part of our energy strategy 2022-2031. We want to add 1,200 megawatts of renewables. And in this way, hopefully, by 2031, over 30% in generation and in consumption, we will rely on the renewables. Currently, we have less than 300 megawatts, but we want to add another 1,200, and we welcome Austrian, Bulgarian, other EU and non-EU friendly countries to come and invest in Kosovo.
Thank you. So you're an excellent salesman of the policies of your own government, if I may say. The motto of the whole discussion is regional cooperation. You've mentioned one example, but then of course there is Serbia, which is not represented here, but which is the biggest economic factor in the region. And well, negotiations, indirect negotiations, at first went pretty far with Serbia, then they broke down. Nearly escalated militarily, and I would really like to ask you, do you expect any rapprochement anytime soon?
Well, today we are not in that good relations, even though this year started quite well. On 27th of February in Brussels, we have reached the agreement, basic agreement for de facto mutual recognition based on the model of two Germanys from 1972, when back then Chancellor Willy Brandt launched Ostpolitik, live and let live, two Germanys recognizing each other. That's what we also agreed with Serbia. We added implementation annex in Ohrid in mid-March, but then Serbia refused to sign and said that it accepts the agreement only in concept, not in content. So this kind of reservation, after agreeing, deteriorated on the ground. We have had attacks on KFOR soldiers, our police and journalists in May, then abduction of 3 of our policemen in mid-June, and recently a terrorist attack on 24th of September when one of our police sergeants was killed. So escalation happened because in spite of verbal agreement on a concrete text, it was not signed, not even at the margins of European Council summit on 26th of October. And precisely these kind of reservations, where what you say, what you do, what you sign or don't, what you implement or don't, do not mean more or less the same thing, is sending to the violent extremists on the ground and to the state apparatus as well, mixed signals which are causing destabilization.
Yeah, but I mean, Serbia is not represented here, but we would like to look ahead. And I wonder, where would you see the potential for economic cooperation with Serbia, if in a sort of a utopia, in a best case scenario, if you may like?
Serbia is our largest neighbor. The border with Serbia is long 381 kilometers. Now it represents a security threat, and it should be an economic opportunity. In order to get there, we need more pressure on Belgrade to sign the agreement that we have agreed upon. And also we need EU integration, because I don't think that our region can integrate outside EU or without EU. It should be towards EU with EU. And Berlin process could be even more in-depth and intensified to that end. But again, signing the de facto mutual recognition is the first but the most important step.
Thank you. Now let me turn to our next guest and speaker, Dimitar KOVACHEVSKI. He's Prime Minister of North Macedonia since January 2022. He's the President of the Social Democratic Party and was previously Deputy Finance Minister. And which I find most interesting is he has an experience as a manager. He used to work for a telecom company, everybody knows you, A1, and you were also the founder of a startup company developing photovoltaic modules. So maybe you could also bring in the view of not only a prime minister and politician, but also of a hands-on manager. And I would like to ask you, where do you see room for improvement in regional cooperation?
Well, first, thank you very much for the invitation. And it's always good to be a guest and a host as a patron of the Vienna Economic Forum. I want to congratulate on the 20th anniversary, as the Vienna Economic Forum proved to be a place which gathers the countries which have to cooperate between each other, but also to integrate in the wider market on the European Union. Yes, I have spent some time of my career in Austria, working for the Telekom Austria group. And when you see these telecommunication groups, previously spending time with the Deutsche Telekom group, it actually proves the power of integration. Because the headquarters in Vienna has other headquarters in Zagreb, in Skopje, and in other countries. One thing is for sure that after this new geostrategic and geopolitical momentum which we have in Europe, the key word is integration. Not only in the European Union, but also in NATO. I mean, when you see that two probably of the most developed countries in Europe, which is Finland and Sweden, which never wanted to join NATO, now they want to join NATO. One of them is already a member and another one is in the process of ratification. It's the same with the European Union. It proved that if that the European Union cannot sustain to have two borders. At this moment there is a outside border of the European Union and there is an inside border which is exactly around the countries of the Western Balkans. So that's why the integration has to happen in the political part, but also in the economic part. And that is why we firmly support and we asked for the plan of the President of the European Commission for the economic growth plan for the Western Balkans, as it relies on the benefits of integration. What we have achieved as North Macedonia in the past 2 years during a time of crisis is really very relevant in terms of strengthening the ties with the European Union. We built on the membership in NATO, so I give you only one parameter. 2016, the foreign direct investments in the country were something about 350 million euros, and in the biggest crisis year, in last year, in 2022, the foreign direct investments were 760 million euros, so double than the amount previously. In terms of salaries, the minimum wage we increased by 100%. Pensions we increased by 40%. But when we go to the usage of the European Union funds, it's also important to stress that North Macedonia proved that by implementing all the procedures and by really doing a hands-on management in the field of agriculture especially, we managed to be the first country to open the IPAR 3 program with a 40% increased funds from the European Union and to spend the IPAR 2 with 100%, which not even some members of the European Union were able to achieve. So that's why I'm saying if somebody is committed, then every goal can be attained. Also, it's very important to stress the importance of the Berlin process, as it gives opportunity to really work on legislation and on agreements which encourage the free movement of goods, people and capital, and this is the essence of the common market. And this was proved that it can be beneficial for the countries because a smaller arrangement on the Balkans, which was organic, and this is the Open Balkan Initiative, proved that building on economic cooperation gives benefits for the citizens. I will mention only that the trade after the initiative with Serbia and Albania overall increased between the three countries for 25%. The trade of North Macedonia with Serbia increased for 50%, with Albania for 40%, and the tourism boomed as the citizens found possibilities to visit the countries in the region. So all of this is going hand in hand with the good political relations, because without good political relations there cannot be an economic integration, and also building on infrastructure. Western Balkans, as no other region in Europe, has been with for decades without a proper infrastructure. Prime Minister DENKOV mentioned the Corridor 8. Due to political reasons, this corridor was never built in the past, because, you know, part of the countries were part of the Warsaw Agreement. We were part of the Yugoslavian Federation, and Albania was a story for itself during the times until the 1990s. But now we already started in the country building on the Corridor 8, the highway with Albania. We are working on express roads with Bulgaria, because I have always said that North Macedonia is the center of the Balkans, but without a proper infrastructure it cannot be a crossroad, but it can be only a roundabout. And that is why we heavily invest in road infrastructure, railway infrastructure, and also energy infrastructure.
Thanks a lot. Maybe you could just a little bit corroborate the energy issue, which was also mentioned in the morning sessions. What kind of potential do you see there in your country and in cooperation with others?
This is something which we really excelled during the past 2 years heavily. I mean, a country whose flag has the sun on it is the country with the most sunny days in the world. And we are the country with the most sunny days in the world. So we took note of the European Green Deal, and we adjusted our energy strategy with the European Green Deal. And we are currently the leader in installation of renewables in the region. So just to note, in the past 2 years, we have issued 658 licenses for renewable power plants, almost 600 megawatts solar, wind and biogas are on the net producing electricity. And just to compare with the consumption, it is an energy which is produced from renewable sources able to satisfy the needs of 198,000 households in the country. We are also working on strategic projects together with our neighboring countries, especially with Greece. And we will start by the end of the year the project management and implementation of a new pipeline, which will allow North Macedonia to connect to the Trans-Adriatic pipeline, to the LNG terminals in Revituza, but as well in the new one, which will be built in Alexandropoli. And this will bring energy independence and diversification to the country. And additionally, we started the process of decarbonization of the country. On one of the old coal mines, because the lignite was the source of energy in the country for decades, we are now changing this and building on the old coal mines solar power plants. The project has already started. The first 10 megawatts are on network, and the next 110 megawatts are in project management phase. And new projects will come. So I can only stress that from a country which was heavily importing electricity, we managed to decrease the import of electricity by more than 50%, and by being able to produce more electricity, we satisfied fully the needs of the regulated market with the subsidized electricity power. And we were also able, during January this year, which was the toughest month after the Second World War, to even export some quantities of energy. So it's possible, There are funds, there are private investors, and there is only a need for proper regulation, which we did, and proper cooperation with the neighboring countries.
Many thanks. And by the way, also thank you for not only being a guest, but also a host as others here, as patrons of the Vienna Economic Forum, which has its 20th anniversary here. It's a good place to come together. I think we can see that. Let me turn to Deputy Prime Minister Nikolai. Yes, please. You want to go to the podium? Okay. He's Deputy Prime Minister of Montenegro only since October 31st, right? Just a few days ago. Before that, he served as a mayor of Tusi, and which is interesting. You belong to the Albanian alternative, and as such, you're part of a coalition government. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Dear speakers and colleagues, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be here today on behalf of the government of Montenegro to discuss and share perspectives on how we can mutually reinforce economic cooperation in uncertain and challenging global context. Vienna Economic Forum established itself in the last 20 years as a meaningful and successful platform for discussion on our mutual economic goals. So on behalf of the government of Montenegro, as a Deputy Prime Minister in charge of economic development, I'm glad to give support in this process. We are living in a new economic reality, witnessing multiple risks related to resilience to supply chains, energy security, cyber security, climate change challenges, as well as multiple geopolitical risks. Global economic challenges are interconnected and they require strategic solutions through strong regional and multilateral cooperation. Ongoing geopolitical challenges highlight the vulnerabilities and risks faced by countries due to disruption in trade, supply chain, and connectivity. Montenegro has an Euro-Atlantic government and a stable political majority that will contribute to the closing of the most important EU negotiation chapter and speed up and reinforce all the necessary reforms. Montenegro is strongly confirmed through strengthened regional and multilateral economic cooperation and will support all the collaborative efforts in achieving the economic prosperity and facilitating trade in the Western Balkans on our EU integration path. New challenges and the consequence of the economic and social crisis have additionally reminded us on the need for reinforced regional cooperation and economic integration. We all know the strong economic integration is an essential driver of growth, job creation and prosperity in our societies. Let me firstly share the economic priority that newly established government of Montenegro set as crucial. Government of Montenegro decisive to create a new sustainable economic growth strategy in order to accelerate its convergence with European Union living standards, a digital, smart and green economy supported by innovative solutions that improves production process and living conditions in the strategic goals of this government. The focus, among other things, will be on the strong development of the ICT sector, especially in position of Montenegro as a recognizable destination for development of the blockchain technology, supporting the energy and transport sector development with the aim of increasing green production capacity. Government of Montenegro plans to support the agricultural sector and give significant support to the processing industry, especially in those branches in which there is a competitive advantage, such as wood processing. Through agreeing the first stability government of Montenegro is decision or living of the green and digital transit, exchanging competency by boosting trade linkages, which is essential to further higher value-added economic sector. Secondly, I would like to emphasize the significance of the regional cooperation on our EU accession path, having in mind that regional cooperation and integration into a EU single market is essential towards the EU membership. Government of Montenegro will be a credible partner in this process. Our mutual goal is to make our economics more resilient by fully exploiting the possibility of the regional integration. We are aware and ready to work on fiscal stability, green and digital economy, meeting the carbon targets and support further development of the transport and energy infrastructure in the Western Balkans. In the current context of geopolitical and uncertainty, the importance of regional cooperation in the Western Balkans is important more than over the strengthening connectivity, transport, trade, energy, and digital ties as between the region and the EU. We all agree that economic integration is an essential driver of growth, job creation, and prosperity, while regional cooperation as a prerequisite for the EU integration for the Western Balkan countries. Guided by the principles of cooperation and mutual respect, the government of Montenegro will continue to strengthen good neighborly relations and support regional cooperation initiatives. Montenegro remains fully committed to regional cooperation and economic integration and continues to introduce European standards, firmly believing in the shared interests and common values. Government of Montenegro is strongly committed to boosting regional cooperation through the Berlin process and implementation of the action plan for common regional market, which represent important instruments for accelerating the economic convergence in the Western Balkans. The Central European Free Trade Agreement, CEFTA, is one of the key governance mechanisms for managing the implementation of the trade reforms specified in the action plan for the common regional markets. Moreover, we will support the reforms that contribute to the better living standards in our countries. Government of Montenegro will work together with the region, aiming to unlock all the economic potential and create lasting solutions in a dynamic macroeconomic environment. Montenegro builds its society and principles of understanding, tolerance, and mutual respect. Diversity does not divide but empower our society. Government of Montenegro remains committed to promoting intercultural dialogue, tolerance, and respect all the levels. In spite of the challenge, I am confident that we can step up and meet the momentum and guarantee the prosperity of the regional integration into the EU market. Thirdly, I would like to refer to the recent published growth plan to the Western Balkans and to reconfirm the government of Montenegro commitment to support further integration into the EU's single market. As highlighted in the government plan, our mutual goal is to facilitate the free movement of goods, free movement of service and works, further access to the single euro payment area, road transport integration and decarbonization of energy market, as well as the integration into the digital single market and into the industrial supply chains. Regional and EU will have reliable strategic partner in the government of Montenegro in our mutual endeavors to implement the needs economic reforms and make our countries a better place to live and work in. Government of Montenegro is Euro-Atlantic and credible NATO partner and proactive next EU member country, determined to fulfill all the necessary steps and will support the regional integration through the Berlin process as an important instrument for grave up the economic convergence of the Western Balkan region with the European Union. Montenegro will actively participate in all regional initiatives that are aimed to bring us closer to the EU market. Regional cooperation has always been important, but nowadays it has a crucial role in overcoming the shared challenges. We are fully committed to tackling these complex challenges through efficient and lasting solutions and models for better integration of every individual in the society. Government of Montenegro firmly believe that together we can deliver the vision of the integrated, sustainable and inclusive future. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister. We have a very ambitious program. I hope you understand that I will go on and ask you questions later in our second round, because we are a little bit late on the time schedule, and you, if that's all right with you. Thank you. We have an insider who should give us an external view, which is Ivan KRASTEV. You've listened to all what the other speakers said. So what is your take on it so far?
Thank you very much. For every good alpha session, there should be a beta voice. So this is my role. And this is my role because there is a difference between taking decisions and commenting on decisions. And for me, the most important is that the situation is changing quite dramatically. Years ago, I was very much interested how the Soviet Politburo in 1989 have been discussing in their first meeting after the fall of the Berlin Wall what happened. And then I discovered that fall of the Berlin Wall was in a Varia. They had pre-scheduled the discussions. It was very much about the agricultural reform. So they basically missed the impact that the opening of the wall basically is going to have on the political development. And I'm saying this because I do believe that we are living in times which in certain way resemble what happened in the late 1980s, early 1990s. The speed of change is incredible. Things are happening all the time. And I do believe this is, for me, the most important thing that is changing. One is people before believed that the Western Balkans, they're in the waiting room of the European Union. And we know what is going to happen, we don't know when. And suddenly you discover that waiting room is the emergency room. That the time factor is the most important factor. And I do believe this is something that, at least in my view, political leaders in the regions are starting to recognize, because in normal times, politicians are rewarded normally for being the first to see the risk. But in time of crisis, in my view, they're rewarded to be first to see the opportunity. And this is a totally different political dynamic. And I do believe that we're in this period in which, for example, and I'm sure that the commissioner and the political leaders know it better than me, but the enlargement is not what it used to be. A country like Ukraine cannot be integrated in the way you're integrating Bulgaria and Romania, keeping in mind that probably most of the time this is going to be a long war that we are facing. So we're in a position in which European Union is not simply enlarging, it is reinventing itself institutionally, but also the geopolitical logic, but also even on the level of energy. I remember years ago on conferences like this, every leader was coming with a map with the pipelines coming through their countries. And I even remember that I always believed that there should be an exhibition, probably in Albertina, about all these maps. And basically everybody is saying at least 3 pipelines go through my territory and so on. And now you basically start to talk about totally different type of energy infrastructure. And this is a radical change. But because we're living day by day, in my view, it's very difficult to see how radical the change is. And here comes my second problem, which is the most important for the people on this panel, and this is how to keep the public to basically deal with this change. Because people, they watch the news, they know that certain things are happening, but they have an everyday life that is not changing so fast. And I do believe this is critically important. And when people are talking about polycrisis, normally they mean that there are many different crises. But in my view, the interactions between them and the fact that the solution to the one crisis can be a problem for the other is something that makes this period so specific. And in my view, it's really interesting, and there was something that on which I have been working recently, trying to imagine Europe as being composed of different tribes based on the fact which of the 5 major crises that Europe has been facing for the last decade, I mean climate, migration, economic crisis, COVID, the war, which one they see as the most important when they were thinking for the future. Because this kind of interplay between different type of crisis sensitivities, in my view, are going to be extremely important to allow some of the policies that have been suggested to work. And I'm going to end up also with the perspective outside of Europe. In 2 or 3 days, we're going to publish a big survey which was trying to measure the mood of the public in 9 of the big non-Western countries. And listen, there is one thing that is very clear. While most of these countries, and I'm talking about countries like Brazil, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, but also Russia, China, South Korea, many of them, not China and Russia in this case, are much more ready to align with the Western values, but also when you're asking them, who do you prefer to regulate the internet? European Union or China, they'll go with European Union. Where you want to emigrate, I don't know, is it a good news or bad news, but they prefer to come to Europe than to go to China. But at the same time, something is very clear. These countries, which are big countries, big populations, major economies, they are now defining their sovereignty as having an option. They are not going to be forced to take sides. We are not back in the way that you can tell them, you're with us or against us. They're simply not buying it. And secondly, while we're telling them that they're sitting on the fence, in a certain way, they are hyperactive. Nobody can accuse President Erdogan of sitting. He's running all the time and in different directions. So from this point of view, I do believe also the European Union, but also the countries on the periphery of the European Union should be adjusted to the activities of these new middle grade powers who are trying to strive for relevance, who are going to be active. And the difference between them and the EU is, and this is my last point, EU is worried about the state of the world. Most of these countries are worried about their place in the world. And this can create a kind of a gap and misunderstanding in the way we're doing the crisis, which can be critically important. And I do believe this is this new context in which all these ideas are going to operate.
Well, thank you. If I may ask you back two questions, if that's possible, about which middle powers were you thinking in your remarks?
Listen, we have been polling in the following countries. So India, China, Russia, South Korea, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, Indonesia, and South Africa. Very different countries. Of course, we have been interested in how they're responding to certain things, and one of the most important for us was, if you're going to force this country to choose where they'll go. And to be honest, with the exception of Russia, all of them were going to go much more towards the US and the EU than toward China. But at the same time, it was very clear that they believe that they have power to resist being forced to choose. This is what has changed. And they also believe that it's very important for them to have an options, particularly when it comes to economic policies. And in my view, this is quite important when all of us are trying to understand how to react. Because as the commissioner said, there are going to be a lot of regional integration, there are going to be nearshoring and probably friendshoring. And all of these countries, this is not a block of countries. By the way, this is not a non-alignment movement. They're competing with each other much more than they're competing with us. But at the same time, they're going to be hyperactive. This is the countries that believe that their time has come, that they're very ambitious. Some of them has probably good ideas, others not so good ideas, but they're going to be active in mediating in the conflict, for pushing. And for us it was important because it's not simply the policy of the governments, their own populations support these policies. Listen, when you ask this type of a foreign policy question, people don't have an opinion, but their moods. And one of the biggest risks for Europe is some of these countries is extremely positive about the future. 84% of the Indians believe that they're very positive about the future of their own country. When you go to Europe, when you go to the United States, we are not overperforming on the level of optimism. In a certain way, there is a kind of a much more pessimistic idea. We are much more losing here and there. And I do believe this is very important, and this is why, in my view, trying to use the crisis and try to understand that seeing opportunities in a moment of crisis is the only thing that paybacks. And this is not an easy story, and this is why I said that I'm in a different position than the others, is to comment on this is very interesting. To take a decision in this environment is not. So writing is nice, but signing is difficult. And most of these people are in the business of signing. So from this point of view, in my view, it's so important to try to understand that you cannot ignore the mood of the public, but you cannot also allow the mood of the public to be the only one that is going to run you, because then we're in a competition in which Europe has never been before.
Thank you. But one more question concerning the public. In which issues is it difficult, in your view, to bring along the public right now?
I'm going to give you, because as I said, we did some polling with the colleagues in the European Council of Foreign Relations, and some of the data is going to come earlier, some are going to do later. But when we decided to poll on different crises and to see these different tribes born out of the crisis, you see the following. There are two groups of people, two tribes, for which the time is the most critical things. One is the climate. People who basically believe that the climate crisis is the most important, they do believe that if something is not going to be done now, tomorrow is going to be too late. And by the way, this is true also on the right for the anti-migration right. They said if we're not going to reverse certain policies now, it doesn't matter what we're going to do tomorrow. It makes it very difficult as a result of it to compromise. Because in democracy, the major political resource is the future. We always believe that certain problems can be solved today, but other problems can be solved tomorrow, and this allows time. And for these two groups, and they're important groups, you're going to see that they said, no, there is no tomorrow. This should be done today. And secondly, we found a very interesting asymmetry. When a far-right party comes to power, like Italy, suddenly people get more relaxed about migration, regardless that, honestly speaking, nothing has changed on the ground. Now, when Greens come to power, their own supporters became even much more nervous about the climate issues because they believe that regardless of the fact that their party is in power, nothing is changing as fast as they want. I'm saying this because all these kind of dynamics are going to be critically important because we're going to make not simply coalitions between parties these days, we're going to make coalitions between groups which are kind of run by different fears, by different expectations, what can happen and what cannot happen. And this is why it is so difficult. And just if you see geography, just to give you 3-4 examples. When you go to a country like Germany, the major worry is migration. You see a country in which basically 32% of the people define migration as the major issue. And all this polling was done before October 7. So we don't have also the impact of the Israeli-Hamas war. And then you go to Poland, and you're going to see that it is the war. So from this point of view, even different parts of Europe, not simply different parts in society, should be reconciled and find this kind of the way to rebalance this crisis, because people have different fears, because history has come back in a different way, and many of the fears are very much historically rooted. And then you go to people who are very much shaped by the economic crisis, and this is the biggest groups in countries like Italy, Spain, Portugal. Interestingly enough, when you see how they vote, they don't vote left or right. They vote against the government regardless of who is in the government. So from this point of view, all these tribes also have a different political dynamics. And this is why it's so difficult in such a diverse group like the European Union to sustain unity on policies, keeping in mind that basically societies are driven in a very different directions.
Many thanks, Ivan. Let's start the second discussion round now with you, Mr. Gentiloni, but please feel also free to react on what the others said to make it more livelier. In your first remark, you've said the way to accession is a long and winding road. Well, it has already been long and winding for those countries. And talking about the enlargement package, do you think that the European Union is institutionally prepared for such a big bang?
I think this is a political decision and perspective which is, in a certain sense, a given from a historical, geographical point of view. So personally, I wouldn't ask myself, is the EU is prepared? Because maybe if it's not prepared, you can skip or avoid this perspective. But I would say, given the fact that there is this perspective, how do we address it? How we prepare ourselves? By the way, I think we all remember the discussion that took place 25 years ago, after the collapse of the Soviet Union. At the time also there was a discussion, okay, the enlargement is too dangerous. If we would not have had a deeper, a stronger integration, the enlargement would have been too big a threat to the European Union. I think we are facing some sort of similar issue now. And I appreciate the fact that there is a discussion going on the changes that are necessary, because of course they are necessary in the EU. If a country like Ukraine, which will be the bigger European country and maybe also the poorer or among the poorest, of course this is changing a lot. And if from 27 we will become 30-something, this is also something that would need changes. But I repeat, my point is not, are we prepared? Of course we are not prepared, but this is not meaning that we can decide, okay, we work, we prepare ourselves, a lot of homework, and then we start. No, we need to address, and time is crucial, as was said before. We had to address this very, very strongly. And my last point is, I know that after the start of the century, when former Soviet Union and former Yugoslavia country entered the Union, we entered in a 15, 20 years of frustration from a certain point of view, no? Of a process going too slowly and then accelerating and then suddenly finding a wall because a single European member states to give an answer to its own public opinion vetoed this or that decision. This was the process in the last 15 years. Very tough to keep a European dream in this kind of situation. But my message is we can like this or not, but the process driven by the Ukrainian war and the Ukrainian crisis is changing this framework and is introducing a different speed in this framework. So we should work to be prepared. We have no alternative to this process, and we should discuss how the European Union will change itself in this inevitable process. And geopolitically, if we look to all the different polycrises that we see, we need a larger European Union with different level of integration, probably. This is easy to describe, a little bit more complicated to implement.
Yes. Thank you. Well, if you want to react to what the Commissioner, yes, please, go on.
Well, I carefully listened to Commissioner Gentiloni, and I would say that for the Italian Prime Minister, there should be more courage. Because I think that this discussion about readiness and that the driver of the EU enlargement is a war going on, I don't find it as a most rational answer. So imagine if this discussion was going on in the United States of America. So whether the USA are ready for 30 states, or for 35 states, or for 40 states, and then imagine if Iowa and Wisconsin are not part of the United States of America, and then you have to go around them in order to come from New York to Los Angeles. So that's why I'm saying that the benefit of the European integration is double-sided. Because the economy of scale, and Commissioner Gentiloni knows that better than me, is working for the ones which are enlarging and for the ones which are joining. And I give you an example. During the time of Yugoslavia, if you take the economic standard and performance of the former Yugoslav republics, it was sky level for Bulgaria, for Romania, for Hungary, from Poland, for Czechoslovakia, and for all the others. I mean, we were what Austria is today for the Western Balkans, we were for the Warsaw Agreement countries. The only thing which developed them economically is the integration in the European single market, nothing else. That's the only reason why they developed economically. Because they had time after their independence from the Warsaw Agreement until the integration in the EU, the economic performance was no different. When they integrated in the EU, the economic performance grew up. 28% in the first 5 years of integration more foreign direct investments, doubling the GDP, doubling the salaries. 33 to 40% more small and medium enterprises, and plus all of them working on a $500 million market. So these are the benefits of EU integration. And it works, and for the EU, and for the new countries which are joining. So that's why I'm saying, if we talk about are we ready, it's an excuse. Because if the United States were talking are we ready, they were never going to be 50 states. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
I believe that the condition for EU enlargement is a certain vision for internal reform. But at the same time, there will be no internal reform without vision for EU enlargement. So circumstances are perfect for big political decisions. Enlargement externally and reform internally go hand in hand. One cannot be done without the other. And in this discussion towards a decision, I believe that Western Balkan 6 should be brought in. So we contribute to this decision-making, which is the decision-making of Brussels. There will be challenges, but there are big challenges anyways. So we need a leap of faith to move forward as fast as possible. Our countries are developing and growing. In 2.5 years, we doubled both FDI and exports. But we should not be compared with EU average, because it's not fair. We should be compared rather with Bulgaria and Romania in early 2000, or with Croatia 5-6 years prior to EU accession. Let me take one example, which has been elaborated by European Stability Initiative, Gerald Naus. Romania, in 2000, GDP per capita power purchasing index was lower than the Western Balkan 6 average nowadays. 7 years after they joined EU. 7 years from now is 2030. So it is doable. Our recent past, our experience in our lifetime shows that it is very doable. But what is needed now are bold decisions, political decisions, which I think geopolitical earthquake should make them easier, not more difficult.
Well, thank you. Now, Mr. DENKOV.
I'll probably put a little bit of different direction to this discussion. I remember very well the 90s when in Bulgaria we had a discussion why we want to become members of the European Union. And most of the people, for whatever reason around me, I was not a politician in any way, they were talking about the European funding. And I remember my professor in chemistry that said, no, this is not the main point. The main point is that we'll have the European rules, and this will give us much more than the European funding per se. And he turned out to be absolutely right. Actually, one of the periods of the fastest development of Bulgaria is before joining the European Union. Why? Because this was a national goal, because we were ready to go there, we made the reforms, and there was a huge progress. And even after the session, there was some relax in the development because we were already in. So I know that the common market is important. Many other economic factors are important, but I do believe that the main factor, this is the internal driving forces in the society. This is a goal that is worthy to pursue. And I strongly believe in this. So when I mentioned that it is the most difficult part is to change the mentality of the people, I do believe this because this is the historical experience that we had. And here I come back to KOVACHEVSKI. It is the role of the leaders, and he is doing this. I really praise him for this. This was the role of the Bulgarian leaders at that time. They said, although we need to pursue the people, although it's difficult, there is an opposition, we, the politicians, have to do this because no one else can do it. And I think this is the main driving force, and this is our role here.
Thank you. I would like to bring Mr. GJELOSHAJ in. There's a lot of talk about impatience in the Western Balkans, EU fatigue. What's the mood like in Montenegro? And then a special question. Do you think, we're talking about building bridges, do you think that minorities could have a special function in building bridges which are which contribute to prosperity in the region?
Thank you. Montenegro have a new government. In the last 3 years, we have big problems with EU integration because two governments will be in at least 3 years don't have any steps through integration of the EU. We can see the last report from the European Commission for Montenegro is the baddest report which I think have any states in the process. And for it, new government have a big job, but also in Montenegro we have 85% of people which want to be part of EU, and least support from the people. The new government need to work to finish. We open with the EU negotiation 2012, and these years we don't work all the time, I think, with strategy, and I think now with new government which is pro-EU, and we plan to finish all jobs we have from United EU, and it is to finish some steps in our jobs is in judiciary, and all dialogue with opposition will start, and we think to the end of the year we finish and lease. And but I believe Montenegro will be the next EU member. We have all infrastructure. We open all negotiation with EU. Have some with Finnish, and on this process we have a big support for the people, and I think, and I am Albanian, I'm minority in Montenegro, and I am vice president. Look it and see how it's minority in Montenegro. He is integrated. We have in the previous government have prime minister is be Albanian, and I think minority is fully integrated, but need to work more and much. And in this process now is in us minority to work and to have a better position. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I open the floor to give you the opportunities to ask some questions, I would like to pass the mic on to the Commissioner.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think that of course we need, as it was said, bold decisions. The very fact that we consider this perspective as necessary, I think, is a bold decision. You may know, and you will see it also in the European Council in December, that it is not an easy and unanimous decision what was proposed by the Commission. We proposed, as you know, to give candidate status to new countries, to start negotiations with new countries. overall, I agree on the fact that if we look backwards to how the so-called enlargement process was managed in the last 15 years, and if we think to address this issue in the next period with the same method and the same timing, we will go nowhere. So to address it now, we need to have clear in mind that we have to act faster and we have to be bolder. But this involves also candidate countries, not only the European institutions. And here I agree with what the Bulgarian Prime Minister said. I have this experience. I've seen this experience in several countries, and I've seen this also in my own country when the issue was to enter the single currency. Having this target means in these countries a lot of changes. And it is a big opportunity for change. And it's a big opportunity of progress. So overall, I think we should commit ourselves to act to be bold, to be fast, but this is for the institutions and for the candidate countries for the coming years. We have an opportunity. Geopolitics is telling this very clearly. Economy and the restructuring of the globalization is telling this very clearly. We have to seize this opportunity and to address the changes that are needed in the structure of the European Union because of this decision. And this, I assure you, is very, very, very bold.
Thank you. Now you have to, yes, please. We have two, maybe for former Foreign Minister Ferrero-Waldner. Do we have mics here, please? Could you pass it? And then Ambassador Eichtinger. First lady, please.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, of course, I understand completely that it is absolutely time to go for enlargement. As you said, bold decisions have to be taken. But we also have to be realistic. I think a European Union with so many states will have to change. And we have to speak realistically and boldly and clearly what change means. That means financing will have to be changed. Cohesion policy, agricultural policy, scientific policy will have to be changed. Because how can you finance so many countries in the same way as we did before? So there are many things to be done, and in the institutional side also. I've been foreign minister and also member of the European Commission for External Relations. And I saw how difficult the decision process is in the Commission on the one hand and in the ministerial councils on the other hand. So I think we'll have to find a new form of decision making. Besides, I also think we have to change the unanimity for some of the important issues and go for qualified majority. I've been thinking for that for a long time. I've been writing it in my books. And I think we have to be clear, both sides, that this is necessary. But we can do this in parallel, because indeed, otherwise we will never finish the issue. So maybe a gradual integration is necessary. Wherefore, we go first with you to the single market, and then slowly, slowly to all the other issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mrs. Commissioner and Foreign Minister. This was a remark, not a question, but we're glad.
Well, my question pretty much follows on what the Commissioner has said. It's about gradual integration. About 2 years ago, our Foreign Minister, Alexander Schalmer, proposed this concept of gradual integration. And this summer, 7 foreign ministers of the EU were committed in the Göteborg Declaration at the European Forum Wachau to this idea to gradually bring in the Western Balkan countries to speed up the integration. This concept also found its way into the State of the Union speech of President Ursula von der Leyen. And my question to the Prime Ministers is really, what do you make of the concept of gradual integration? How important would it be to see benefits for your citizens? And what areas would you like to see to come in quickly into the integration of the European Union? Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Great question. We have one more question, the gentleman over there, please. And yes?
Okay. Yeah, my name is Günther Fehlinger. I do the NATO enlargement campaign, and my question here is about the fast-track enlargement of the European Union, especially for the NATO allies, which we have already free in Montenegro, in Albania, and in North Macedonia. They are also from the preparations already ready. Why can the EU at this strategic time of war not be a bit faster and take these three small NATO allies into the European Union much faster? Thanks.
Thank you. This was short and snappy. Maybe whoever wants to answer the question, what do you think about this concept of gradual integration? Whoever wants to answer, maybe. Yes. What do you mean? Time is up. Okay, so you mean there should be no gradual accession, but okay.
So, when I gave my introductory addressing, I addressed the gradual integration. And the gradual integration, to be honest, has already started with the visa liberalization some years ago. Because this is one of the benefits of being candidate member for the European Union and having the visa liberalized status. The new growth plan, as presented, will have positive influence, definitely, in several different segments. Number one, it will increase the reforms because the additional funds will be connected as well with the reforms done by the country candidates. Number two, it will increase the regional cooperation between the countries in the Western Balkans, as again, the funds will be available upon joint regional projects, especially here, meaning in infrastructure, in energy, transport, and so on. Number three, it will increase the cooperation with the European Union, as it will open a sectoral ability for certain industries to join the common European market, which will increase their economy of scale. And lastly, but not least, it will increase the trade between the region and with the European Union, as also the European payment network will be available in order to decrease the payment costs. So all in all, it will have, I would say, at least 10% positive effect on the economies of the Western Balkan countries, which is a respectable number. It will increase the cooperation between the countries and with the European Union, and it will speed up the integration with the common European market, and will have the positive influence on the reforms which have to be done in each of the countries.
Thank you. Commissioner, your take and maybe...
Oh, I fully agree. By the way, in the package that was approved last week, the scope of this facility is exactly to start to promote this. it's a limited amount of money. It's 6 billion, but I think it's for our budget, it's a significant move. Of course, the message should be clear that gradual integration doesn't mean that we are postponing integration forever. This is a little bit the same message about this European political community that was proposed, that met a couple of times until now. Again, this is an answer to a problem, how to involve candidate countries and other countries in some of the main political decisions already by now. And again, I agree, this is less important than the economic integration, but I agree, it is useful, provided that it is not a way to freeze the process of integration and political enlargement. The real tough discussion for the European institutions with candidate countries, but mainly for the European institutions, will be the discussion on how we have to redesign, to better design our own functioning in the EU, no? Because of course we can't transform the EU in a sort of UN with 35 member states, unanimity mechanism, total vetocracy inside the Union. This is a nightmare. So bold decisions means also to have the political ambition to change something in our mechanism, to make this larger European Union, which is needed and inevitable, also a functioning European Union.
One word to the fast track for NATO member countries.
Well, I think there are different processes. Of course, the NATO accession for certain countries is easier. We saw how fast it was for Finland, for example. The EU accession is a different process. Anyway, also the NATO accession is not always easy, as we saw. One of the middle power that I don't remember if Ivan, you mentioned it, is part of the NATO and not enthusiastically supportive of Swedish accession in NATO. So it could take time also to access to NATO. But I don't think that automatically this should create a different path for the EU accession.
Well, thank you. Ambassador KIRTCHEVA, please.
Thank you very much. And I didn't want to take for the time of the Prime Ministers and Commissioner, but I'm here and I have a lovely question. 2018, Bulgarian has the presidency of the EU. And I asked at this time, 5 years ago in Sofia, I asked the Prime Ministers at this time from North Macedonia and from Bulgaria, when I'm a young people, maybe you can't see everybody, but if I will be a position in my life to sit in a railway and to go from Sofia to Skopje. I'm asking this question because I teach my students before the change, and it's a ferman from the Sultan. After the beginning of the railway era, the first in this time, Turkey or Sultan Osman Empire, the first connection built by Baron von Hirsch von England was between Russe and Varna, between river and sea. And in this ferman, 150 more years old, is the project now called corridor number 8. After that, corridor number 8 was also priority for European Commission. So I'm asking, I don't expect now to give me answer, but I ask you to think about maybe the Weber year, I know, so, or everything what is difficult, but we are in 21st century. To make this railway, it's, if I'm not wrong, 17 kilometers only. 17 kilometers between Sofia and Skopje, the only two capital cities who are not connected by railway. So, if you allow me, I will invite everybody 22nd of April to our Sofia meeting, and maybe at this meeting in Sofia we will have answer of this question. Thank you very much. And I know that now our president is going to the... Thank you very much again.
Thank you. The President, Djakovic, has the gigantic task to sum up the whole event here.
To sum up the whole event, well, I think we may be serving dinner tonight. I'm only joking. If I were to sum this up very quickly, very briefly, honestly, I did make a few notations from the two sessions that we had this morning because they were really great sessions with international observers, international representatives, but there were a few things that came out with several presentations. Resilience was a word that was used even here in this panel. Resilience was a word that came up so frequently this morning for those of you who were here and were listening to it. Innovation, cooperation. We heard from the international financial institutions about mobilizing the private sector. The need for digitalization. The goal of 2030 was quoted from EU officials as being the time when we can depend upon EU enlargement. The problems, the brain drain. We heard even some facts and figures about how many people are leaving the region and how this needs to be reversed. Brain drain, the energy problems, energy and economic dislocation, inflation connected with that, but movement towards green energy. I was very impressed with a presentation by someone from way outside of the region, and that is from Latvia. Why? It's a very small country, but she was talking about how in terms of the green agenda and renewable energy, Latvia is now the second country in the European Union, in ranking in the European Union for renewable energy. That's very interesting. A small country, as our countries here in this region are usually quite small as well. Rule of law and the very importance of people, the education of the people, education and training of young people. Before I go on to anything else, I would like to make a special acknowledgement here. If you could please, a round of applause for our interpreters who have been working all day in German and in English, please. And if there are any Webster University students still left, if they haven't gone off to the discotheques, could you please come up at the end of the entire program, and we may be able to do some photography with some of the people here. In the discussion that we had in this panel, I would not dare to put myself in a position of trying to sum up what these gentlemen have said and what they have talked about, but it is quite clear that the warfare in Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, has given us a new geopolitical moment, a new geopolitical movement. As Commissioner Gentiloni has referred to it as a boost. Well, it certainly is that.
The development of regional integration obviously comes to the fore in this discussion. And as Prime Minister KURTI put it, the need for external enlargement at the same time that we have continuing internal reforms. And we have an emerging multipolar world. We have emerging multipolarity with middle power centers, as they were called, and many of them, which is replacing the old global world order. We are moving to a new one. I'm not sure what it's going to look like, but there it is. You know, the title of this session was called Continuing to Build Economic Bridges During Difficult Times. When have we not faced difficult times? But particularly right now, we have warfare, vicious warfare in two areas. We have the economic dislocation that has resulted from that. Migration that will become an increasing problem, especially, I think, for Europe. Climate change, cybersecurity, and the disinformation and misinformation that goes along with the idea of cybersecurity. People's frustrations. We know that there is frustration in Western Europe with the idea of expanding institutions into Eastern Europe and the Balkans. We know this. But we also know there are frustrations among the people of the Balkans and Eastern Europe, waiting since Thessaloniki in 2003, 20 years, the duration of the Vienna Economic Forum, for a change and for enlargement. And finally, as an American, I would have to point out the coming US elections as a possible change in the geopolitical structure that we have in the world. So please keep an eye on that as well. I want to thank you very much for being with us for this lengthy Vienna Economic Forum session. As long as it was, I think it was also extremely useful. And I thank all of you for being here and for participating and attending. Ambassador KIRTCHEVA, please, I give the microphone to you.
So I have begin this morning with thank you very much. And I will say closing words again. Sorry. I want to close this day, a long day for some of us, again with thank you very much. Thank you for the city of Vienna, to the city of Vienna, for this beautiful hall. It's not easy and not normal to be here in this, the amazing, have a look, this is the City Hall of Vienna. It's a very nice place, and I'm very thankful to the Bürgermeister, to the Dr. Ludwig, and to the City of Vienna for giving us this opportunity to have all guests of Vienna Economic Forum, all participants today here in this hall. Thank you very much to all members, friends, strategic partners, supporters of Vienna Economic Forum. I mentioned in the morning that on the beginning, Vienna Economic Forum was homogeneous Austrian. It was the idea, and the Austrian economy was interested to go southeast. This is actually our motto: go southeast, because from Austria to go southeast to all these countries was the big challenge and the big possibilities to become, and Austria became really investor number one in many of these countries, of all 13 member countries of Vienna Economic Forum. Today, this 20th Jubilee of Vienna Economic Forum is something good, and it's time of thinking about the future. I'm asking myself, the motto of Vienna Economic Forum, economy is the motor. Is this motto nowadays, in these circumstances, in wars in the world, is this the right motto? I'm convinced that it is the right motto. It is the right motto if the politician manage to give the real framework, the right framework, and to let the economy to make the bridges, to continue to make bridges in the difficult time is very difficult. I believe that all representatives here in Hall of the different branches of economy are ready, they are thinking about the motto. I can give many examples, many real examples with years, with dates, with countries and with persons who are in the framework of Vienna Economic Forum, so working together. OMV, or PVAU, called here in Austria, was the first, and Patron in Romanian, now in 100% hand of PVAU. They are looking and they're making exploration in Black Sea. And I'm quite sure, what means sure, I read about that is maybe it's a good possibility to take part in this exploration for Bulgaria. We, Verbund, here is our honor president, I don't see him at the moment, who was very, very long time, so member of CEO of Verbund. Verbund and EVN, they, in a joint venture, 50-50 joint venture, they both in Albania, in so-called ASHTA, water, Kraftwerk. And this is with the biggest and the newest, for Siemens, newest innovation. We are so many in this framework of Vienna Economic Forum. We are really so many. We have many possibilities to do it. And my appeal, my message is: let us do it together. Let us think about the region as a common region, because every country from the member countries of the Vienna Economic Forum are small countries. It's small countries. Only as a region we have the perspective, and only as region belongs to Europe, because this is a Europe region. It's my message, and I thank again to everybody for this very interesting session. The whole day was very interesting, and we will think about the idea for the future. And I will mention again that we plan with the Bulgarian government the next Vienna Economic Talks in Sofia in April, 22nd of April. But before going to Sofia, I would like to ask everybody, the people, the persons, the excellencies, to come with us, with our president, Ambassador Jakovic, and I don't see here, our honor president, to come to the Presse event, so-called here, because we have some small secret, a small thing for everybody for sure. Thank you very much again, and please.
Well, thank you. Thank you for organizing this great event, Ambassador KIRTCHEVA. And thank you, Commissioner and Prime Ministers, for participating. Good evening.
Thank you very much for the moderator. Mr. ULTSCH, thank you very much.